This is the Fair Fight Initiative podcast, brought to you by the Fair Fight Initiative, a nonprofit 501c3 that crowdsources litigation to end mass incarceration. I'm Linda Franks, the Executive Director of the Fair Fight Initiative in Baton Rouge.
And I'm Dave Kartunen of the Fair Fight Initiative in Boston. In this episode, we'll be speaking to Norris Henderson, the founder and executive director of VOTE, Voices of the Experienced, in New Orleans, who has an extraordinary 5-decade story to tell that ends with a ribbon cutting of a new building in New Orleans that we'll have a chance to show you online, and talk about all of the challenges that he's faced over those years in getting rights back to formerly incarcerated people.
We'll share a way that one community is taking action against mass incarceration and ways that you can advocate in your own community in our Infinite Hope report.
We'll also have an update on the Fair Fight Initiative's work, this time coming from a lawsuit in Savannah, Georgia, against the county, Chatham County, and the medical provider inside the Chatham County Detention Center, Correct Health, in the death of 34-year-old Lee Michael Creeley that would not have been possible without funding that came from crowdsourced funds at the Fair Fight Initiative.
But Dave, stop me if you've heard this before.
All right.
But in Minneapolis, we
Of
hear
all places.
Yeah. We hear of another fatality at the hands of law enforcement issuing a warrant and executing a no-knock warrant. This time, the young man, 22-year-old Amir Locke, was asleep in his apartment on the couch. When law enforcement, executes this no-knock warrant, looking for someone
Someone else, right?
Yeah, definitely not him. This young man is sleeping on the couch. He has from what reports are telling us, he had a weapon, and was just gunned down right there, laying on the couch. I mean, reminiscent of what we had to witness with Breonna Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Another no-knock warrant.
Another no-knock warrant. And the thing that I, really want to say, because of course everyone's going to scramble to say, was it justified? And he had a weapon. But this weapon was registered, right? He had his registered weapon.
He had no criminal record.
Laying next to him as he slept in the front of this lodging, right? When someone bursts in in where you're sleeping, wakes you up out of your sleep at 6 o'clock in the morning, and for the first few seconds, do you really even hear anything? It reminds me of how we used to play jokes on, my brothers or my sisters, my cousins. Somebody would be asleep and you take that string and you dangle it and they end up smacking themselves in the face. How can you expect for someone to make conscious, rational, spur of the moment decision when you've got them in an instantaneous fight or flight stance, busting into their front door, and screaming at the top of your lungs, police, police, or whatever you're screaming? Yep. To think someone would have the benefit of having to be able to think rationally.
Yeah, any reasonable person would expect the amount of time for someone to recover from a deep sleep.
Right.
Amir Locke was already dead.
Yes.
He was shot and killed within seconds.
And
I have misgivings about guns and certain Second Amendment rights, but I know that we won't see the Second Amendment people standing up for Amir Locke, right?
Right.
He had no criminal record, had a registered weapon in his own home, and was dead within seconds. And somehow I doubt the Second Amendment people will be standing up for him because, of course, that's not what they think their Second Amendment rights are really about, right? So in response, Minneapolis has decided to suspend no-knock warrants. There's very little oversight of these things. And, of all places, the same police department that killed George Floyd, you would think would have, looked inward at this point. And yet here we are again, back in Minneapolis, another innocent life taken. Well, that one's tough. This one is mystifying. Linda, stop me if you've heard this one before, but we're going to talk about a bridge collapsing. Oh, well, what does that have to do with mass incarceration, right? Well, you may have seen The Fern Bridge, the Fern River Bridge, I believe, in Pennsylvania, collapsed at the end of the month in January. 10 people were hurt, including 3 seriously injured, on the day President Biden was supposed to be in Pennsylvania talking about infrastructure.
Yes.
And of course, people in Pennsylvania probably already knew this, but they had thousands of bridges that were ranking poorly on the Department of Transportation's list. This one was rated poorly. And in the last 6 years, $4.2 billion with a B dollars were supposed to go towards restoring and repairing their infrastructure and bridges, and instead went to the state police department. So, Linda, I know that people get antsy when they hear the word defund. But when you use the word defund, you are not talking about disbanding police departments. You are talking about all of the money that goes unchecked and unaccounted for that isn't even appropriated to them, that they're just getting. That's what you mean. That's what I mean when we talk about defund. Let's look at where this money is going, where it's supposed to be going, and maybe bridges won't stop collapsing. And of course, state police departments are getting all this money and all these toys and these tanks and these SWAT team tactical gear for things like no-knock warrants. And no one ever questions, oh, it's just more money. They just need the more money. Well, when bridges start collapsing, maybe people will start to digest what the word defund really means.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, it's not like this guy first alerted the public, in 2019, right?
Yeah, we've known this for years.
Yeah, you've got a state who has the highest gas tax in the nation, Pennsylvania. You guys are paying the highest gas tax, and you're expecting that this is going to be, used to shore up your infrastructure. You've got all of these, like they said, all of these bridges that are earmarked. They have already been cited.
Yeah, you make
as
a deal,
being
right?
in a state of total disrepair, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna pay this gas tax so that I get something for it, right?
Right. And these bridges and roads, right, were slotted for for repair back like in 2017, right? So we're looking at years that that you've got crumbling infrastructure, that your bridges need to be shored up. You've got people paying this high tax, the highest in the nation. And then you find out that this money is not being used for what it's earmarked for, but being diverted. And why is it being diverted, right? So you have these little towns that don't have their own police department. So
or in some cases disbanded their police department and took on the services of the state police, right?
Yes. And they say, you know what? We're going to pay for it. I mean, it's just like you said, and when you're in, what we call criminal justice reform or equal justice, people want to really slate the electorate against each other. Oh, you want to defund the police. Oh, you're anti-police. But that's not what, like you said, what we're doing. There are so many other things that add to public safety instead of people, in uniform running around, with their guns and their no-knock warrants. So,
I would certainly say that Pennsylvania has a public safety problem on their hands now, don't they?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's just doesn't have to do with crime.
No, it doesn't. Well, stop me if you've heard this one before now, Dave. I've got one right out of Louisiana, my own home state.
Another state police department.
So it appears that there is an article or some information that has shown that our governor was, to some extent, aware of the severity of the situation with Ronald Greene. If you guys are not familiar, Ronald Greene was beat to death. There's no other nice way to say that. Beat to death in 2019 by Louisiana state troopers. And his family was told at the time that he had died in a car accident, that he had led the state police on a high-speed chase. His car, crashed, and he died as a result of his injuries. Until, of course, body camera footage comes out.
Which they tried to hide.
Which they tried to cover up now. Let's not call it hiding. They tried to hide and cover up, whatever you want to, say. But so they tried to hide this video that was brought to light by, I would say, by someone of integrity, a law enforcement officer who saw that it was being covered up and wanted to make sure that the truth got out. Well, now we find out that the governor knew more than what he led on to, to know a lot earlier.
And we welcome Governor John Bell Edwards to the conversation, because now he says it was horrific and that this wouldn't have happened to a white person.
Right.
And we hope that the governor will now, do the right thing and bring this information to light. And this is, of course, the civil rights investigation now that's happening at the federal level. The FBI was the one who did the second autopsy on Ronald Green. I think it's also important to mention here, Linda, that this started with a traffic violation.
Yeah.
And I understand that if blue lights go on, and people know that if you just, flee, that they won't chase you, that could become a deterrent problem. But there's just something that has always bothered me about these deaths and these cases that begin with, a seatbelt. But we have so many other means of identifying people at this point that they're putting public safety at risk by going on these, cops and robbers chases through communities at high speeds for, really what I feel is just indignation that, oh, this person didn't stop for me. And you hear so many times afterward, and you hear in this body camera video how scared Ronald Green was. I'm scared. Mm-hmm. I'm scared. And people don't trust that they're not going to get hauled out of their cars and beaten to death, which it appears that the Louisiana State Police has a certain proclivity of doing. And so can't we find a better way than to start chasing people around towns at high speeds for seatbelt violations or for other, for not stopping before they turn right on red? I mean, there's so many cases like this. And if you want to say it's about public safety, maybe don't chase people at 115 miles per hour.
Especially not for, changing, illegally changing a lane or not using.
Right.
When we know that's a cover, right? I mean, can we be honest? If I can't be honest on this podcast, then I can't be honest anywhere. It's always been an opportunity to harass and to victimize, to oppress people that look like me. I mean, Black men, this is always, their biggest fear. As a Black mother, our biggest fear is that your child is riding along a country road and, some white cop sees that there's a Black guy in a car and knows that all he has, he pretty much has free reign to do whatever his spirit is inclining him to do at that particular time, right? And so we see that as it plays itself out in the justification of how dare you run from me, and when you say that it just requires training, that training, as some people want to so eloquently put it about the some of the issues that plague my community, that it starts in the home. It starts at how children are raised.
Right.
And so these men didn't get this inherent bias and implicit bias and racist, inclinations from just being on the police force. They came there with them from their homes. And so if we want to have a real candid and honest talk about why this is happening, it's because it's happening by design. And so I get so aggravated when I see after the fact people who really want to take their privileged license to do what they will to people of color or even people of lower class rating of whatever economic rating, educational rating. But then once the light of day is shined on it, they want to cast that, there's this racism and we've got to work harder to weed it out. You already know who it is. Yep. You already know who it is. And you still allow for them to have positions of power where they have an opportunity to dictate whether someone lives or dies.
And in this case, they immediately went to work on the investigator who tried to bring it to light, as is almost always the case. Attack the whistleblower, don't look inward.
Exactly.
All right, Linda, stop me if you've heard this one before. We've got to address it. Spotify. If you are listening to us on Spotify, we will remain on Spotify, and we want to explain our thinking behind this. But the first thing we want you to do is we want to ask you and invite you to join us on another place where you can get your podcasts. You can get the Fair Fight Initiative podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can get it on iHeart Podcasts. You can get it on the Fair Fight website. You can get it on YouTube. You can get it on several other places too. Those aren't the only places that you can get the podcast. If you go to the Fair Fight Podcast website, fairfightinitiative.org, you can see all the different places that you can get our podcast. I hope that there is a day when we have the authority in our voice and the following in our movement that our stance on Spotify can somehow be a message to their CEO and to their shareholders and to their company. At this point, our cause is too small and too important not to use this platform to get our message out. That being said, we are horrified by the things that we have learned about Joe Rogan's show. I have deleted the Spotify app. Linda, I think you have too.
I actually have. I never really used Spotify, to be honest.
Well, you're way ahead of me then.
But what I will say is that, in instances like this, it's very important when you have to check your own integrity level. And, like Dave said, I really want my listeners and our listeners and people that I love to understand that the cause of fair fight is so important. And sometimes that, people say at all costs, you got to stand up for what is right, to do the right thing just because it's the right thing. But ending mass incarceration and making sure that people who cannot afford representation have a voice on every platform is equally as important. And what I want to say is that understand that I am extremely sensitive to who I am speaking to and why I am speaking. And it is important to me to make sure that if God has granted me an opportunity to be able to speak, that I do it in every opportunity that is available to me right now.
That is very well said. And we will also say that we would welcome an invitation to appear on Joe Rogan's show to talk about issues of mass incarceration, why lawyers don't want to take these cases, why we need to crowdfund money to support investigations that lead to get better justice in the system. And we would love to challenge him on some of his horrifying and ignorant viewpoints. We have heard this before, of course, but until everyone has heard it, we're not going to stop talking about it. Our guest this episode is Norris Henderson, who has an incredible 5-decade story of fighting for the rights of formerly incarcerated people, including himself. It was during a life sentence in Angola prison where Norris began and co-founded the Angola Special Civics Project, which began a journey that led to his freedom and provides a story of hope in criminal justice reform. And he joins us from the new Vote office in New Orleans.
First of all, let me say thank you again so much, Mr. Norris Henderson, for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us for this time. I just want to personally say what an honor it is. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I am a big fan of Vote. I'm a big fan of you, Mr. Checo, and all of the work and the things that the amazing people at Vote are doing and are aspiring to do. And I am humbled to even be a part of what you guys are doing. I take part in one of your leadership trainings that's being held here in Baton Rouge by your contingent here. I want you to know that your people are committed to the vision of Vote, and it's a wonderful thing to work with them in the community. And I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm just absolutely happy. I'm a fan. I'm not going to gush too much. So again, thank you so much for being here. And we want to start by just really having you talk about yourself.
I think I can just take one of Checo's line, just a poor boy a long way from home, that was kind of like the story we would tell the folks when they would see us inside the prison. It was like, hey, I'm just a poor boy a long way from home. And so this journey of mine, this journey that I'm on, kind of like started here in New Orleans as I'm born and raised here in New Orleans. And I was either, if not the smartest kid in the classroom, maybe the smartest male. And so I've always had this yearning for learning, even in the community that I come out of, I would be in neighborhoods and I would have a book in my back pocket, so if I'm sitting in the project, I'm sitting down on the stairs reading the book. And it was kind of like, I guess in hindsight, looking back at it, I guess it was kind of, this kid's in the wrong place, and even so that even when I wind up in prison, And they give you these battery tests early on to kind of, I guess, to check your aptitude and stuff. And those folks would say the same thing. How did you wind up here? Nothing in your profile dictated that you should have wind up here. And I think prison for me was a bad experience with good results. And I say that because I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing today had it not been for that bad experience. And I'm saying bad experience, not in the sense that, people done me harm or nothing like that, but it became the eye opener in a sense of what this system was all about. It allowed me to really learn and study the law. And now, 30, 40 years later, I'm taking that very same knowledge and using it in a way that's educating our communities about what these systems were all about. And I tell people a lot that those on the cutting edge of change sometimes don't benefit from the change they bring about. Well, everybody knows I worked in the prison law library for better than 20 years, became really adept at the law. And so when I'm raising legal questions, folks can't question whether or not do you know what he's talking about. And then when I talk about conditions inside those places, people can't say, oh, what he's talking about, he don't know. I do know because I've been there, front seat, third chair. And so I think that gives me the kind of like credibility in the sense that other people may or may not have when they're dealing with these types of issues. It's like our campaign around OPPRC, around the Orleans Parish Prison, was primarily these voices of folks who have been inside could tell the story more than the academicians because they were in theory. We were about, no, this is our life experience. And so I think this has been that catalyst for us being successful, that our life experiences are starting to pay dividends in a different way. This system, and I tell people all the time, it's not broke. This system is designed to do just what it's doing. The thing is, our job has become highlight what that crisis is, shifting the frame and offering a solution. I should tell folks all the time who would come visit the prison, I used to ask them, why are you here? Are you here because your faith teaches you to have you visited people in prison? Or are you actually here to actually help us? I say, okay, help is not what you want to give me. Help is what I need. And I think that is the biggest piece of it, is that a lot of folks circle the wagon like, I'm here to help you. But if you're not willing to do what I need you to do, you're not here to help. Because in life, there's going to be three types of people you encounter. They're going to be aides, they're going to be allies, they're going to be associates. When you find somebody that's all three, that person becomes your friend. And so when you're encountering people, you have to really be sincere with people about how they show up.
You about to make me shout up in here. Let me tell you something. That's what people fighting in the system have to realize, that the things that we have gone through, that we haven't gone through them for ourselves or to show how strong we are, but because God could trust us to use that experience to further.
Exactly. And that's the perfect segue, because I tell people that all the time. It's like, there's nothing special about me. And the same thing, these trials and tribulations that we go through is just to test our mettle. I remember a judge out of Baton Rouge, Judge Robert Downing. He had came to one of our LIPA meetings and was given a speech. And he would say one of the things he never prayed for was patience. And I was like, uh-oh, because my Islamic attribute, sabur, means patient. And so when he said that, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm going to sit up straight in the chair. Now I got to hear this. He said, because with patience comes trials and tribulations. And in that moment, my whole life started passing in front of me, And it was like, at 2 years old, my mom died. At 13 years old, my mom's only brother died. Then my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, before I was 14, she died. So one whole side, my whole maternal side of my family was gone. was completely gone. Fast forward, grow up, become a young man, have kids of my own. 3 years before I get out of prison, my son get murdered. The second year before I get out of prison, my paternal grandmother died. Almost 1 year to the date that I get out, my dad dies. Just because you say you believe don't mean you want to be tested. But I guess God realized then, and the whole while I was inside, I helped create a hospice program, to deal with death and dying and how to adjust it. One of the things that I remember one of the trainers told me was that after I shared that, I said, man, you've experienced a lot of death. And then to cap it off with, I'm born on November the 1st, which is All Saints Day in Louisiana. And so most of my birthdays were visiting the cemetery. And I never could understand it as a kid. Why me? Not knowing that there's a bigger plan for you somewhere down the line. But I need to be able to rely on you when things get rough. The work that we're doing, why I've been kind of like blessed to do this work, then people kind of like start connecting the dots. Oh, I see. You just went off to training and now you're back and now you're sharing the training. Because I tell people all the time, I don't think God blessed me with all of this knowledge about this particular system to keep to myself. All of it goes back to the formidable education I had as a kid, that when I got to the prison, because of the skill sets I had, I'm a machinist by trade. And so I didn't have to work in the field for long. I had to do my little 90 days in the field, but the people realized, oh, he got real skills. I got a job working out of the fields, working in the machine shop. And then when the guys going to the law library every day, trying to figure out how to get myself out, they had a law class. The guy introduced me to it, and they give you a little battery test. And when I took the test, the guy was like, oh, you don't need to be in a class. You need to be helping us teach the class. The law literally became my wheelhouse. And so I have taken all of that and the blessings that came along with them and helped build this organization. Because one of the things that really motivated me was I just couldn't understand for the life of me how somebody could be in prison with you, sleep next to you for 10, 12, 15, 20 years, get out, and forget you even existed. I just couldn't figure that piece out. I asked God that if you ever bless me to get out this place, one, I wouldn't forget where I came from, nor would I forget the people I left behind. And so in 2003, when I got out, literally a year from the day I got out, I actually founded the organization VOTE, which was actually created while we was inside, praying that somebody get out and carry the mantle. And then it fell on me.
Well, you mentioned the word patience, and if there's a picture of it, a better picture, but I don't know where to find it. But you also mentioned the word frame there. And so I wanted to frame your 5 decades, because you did start to date yourself there with the mention of how the schools were. But to frame it over these 5 decades that you've done this work, I'm sorry for saying 5 decades. That sounds like a lot.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Between when you started this work, how VOTE came to be, and this moment that we're in now.
Matter of fact, as we're talking, I actually have a copy, and this is what we actually drafted, was an analysis, penal reform in Louisiana, the need for immediate change. And this was done in 1987. And so 30 years before the Justice Reinvestment Act came along in 2017, we had already created this proposal to analyze parole laws governing long terms and life. And so I think we were kind of like the cart before the horse back then. But still, we don't have the luxury to quit. We can't give up. And so we just kept toiling and struggle, toiling and struggle, toiling and struggle. But what it started doing was just sharpening our tools. We just kind of like start learning how this system works, how the legislative process worked, what we needed to do on that. So by the time I got out, I hit the ground running. I literally hit the ground running, knew exactly what I needed to do, didn't know all the people I needed to meet, but I knew exactly what needed to get done and had to build a core of people to try to make it happen. Over those decades, that's what it was, incrementally getting this little thing done, getting this done. But the reality that while we were inside, we got a bill passed. We're outside now. We should sure enough be able to get something done because we can show up ourselves, tell our story, and get people to listen. And so in 2017, everything came to a crescendo. We were able to go in the legislature ourselves and start telling our story. You know what? I was that lifer who done this. I was that lifer who wrote this. I can explain to you how we got into the situation that we're in. And they were all ears. And so we were there and able to provide the institutional knowledge how Louisiana became the number one incarcerator in the world. And then there were folks who were there saying, oh, we need to lose that distinction. I said, well, I'm all in. And they were echoing, I'm all in too. I'm like, oh, okay, we own something now. It was miraculously that we got 10 criminal justice pieces of legislation done in that session in a bipartisan way. And people all across the country kind of like just started sitting up straight and said, wait a minute, this is a red state. And they got all this criminal justice reform done. What happened? It took us 30 years to get where we had gotten, but we had arrived. One of the other things about being in the position that we were in, we were able to identify everything that was wrong with this system. So in 2018, when it was talking about 2018, we was talking about non-unanimous jury verdicts. We were like, I had one of them and I went to prison and I shouldn't have. And so when people start telling real stories, it was easy for us to go knock on people's door when we were canvassing and explain to people what the non-unanimous jury verdict was, and people saying, that's what my son was talking about. That's what my daughter was talking about. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And so this last legislative session had 5 pieces of legislation. 4 out of 5, the governor signed them into law. One of them was the expanded voting rights for folks that's on probation. How former incarcerated people to now be able to serve on a jury. They have the 2045 law that I talked about, we got passed in 1990, that they repealed in 97. Well, this year, we got it reinstated and made it retroactive all the way back. And so 3,000 people became immediately eligible for parole release. And then the last one is the collateral consequences that a judge now, before they sentence you to prison, have to advise you that, oh, you know, if you're guilty, oh, that one, you may lose your right to vote. You may lose access to healthcare, access to education. But also now, too, is that because you have to have a unanimous jury verdict, DAs now are reluctant to kind of squeeze people because people are like, oh, take me to trial.
You know, and just hearing all of that, there's just the expanse, and it drove me back to you talking about, you know, culmination of work. How about this sheriff's race in New Orleans? For those of us who have lived our experience in the South and understand the dynamics of the quote unquote Southern sheriff and all of that goes along with that system and that dynamic. Can you speak a little bit about Vote's participation and how all of that victory kind of came about?
To add to that you know, Susan Hudson ran on a campaign that wasn't more of the same, but with a different. We're not gonna expand those beds. We're gonna get rid of those phone calls. It wasn't just pick someone else. What was remarkable about it to me was that we're gonna stop doing this stuff.
And I think the thing too is the groundwork had been laid for years from OPPRC, complaining about all the atrocities that happened in the jail and stuff like that. And it was like, people was like, okay, that's it. We didn't have enough. Well, here's the tragic thing about this city, the state, is that everybody has been touched by the criminal justice system, either directly or vicariously. And so when you're knocking on doors, somebody in that household has been impacted. They want change. They want people to be treated as human beings. Yeah, you've done something that may have been outside of the societal norms, and you're going to be, that corrective behavior conversation has to happen, but we can do it a lot better. People heard the message that I will not support building additional beds. I want to treat people like our neighbors. They're our neighbors who just happen to be in our custody now. And so that message actually resonated around what direction this community is going in, but it also signals, oh, we can do this, we can replicate this. We can put this show on the road because people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so that was kind of like one of the biggest political stories of the year was the sheriff race here in New Orleans. But like I said again, I don't think our job is done just here in New Orleans.
Yeah,
I think I got tacit permission there from Norris Henderson to be cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. Yeah, we all should.
Got to be cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
Because there are forces out there that don't want us to succeed. There are forces out there that wants to keep the status quo, and we have to be able to educate our folks about that. This is what I'm saying. One of the mistakes that other campaign made is when you started vilifying us and you claiming you're about re-entry and rehabilitation, and you're throwing books at people who the face of all of these things, and folks are like, no, those tricks are not going to work. Yeah. And so I think what this does too is give us leverage in the sense of how we approach the table now. It's like, we're not the just somebody being invited to dinner. You know what? We can prepare the meal.
That's right.
We can prepare the meal. So I'm excited about what the future, holds for us moving forward, and what it looks like here in the state of Louisiana. And, me and Chico was, right after the election, me and Chico was just laughing, and Chico was saying, how God say, you make your enemy your footstool, and so, my feet been off the ground for a couple of days.
That's a great picture to see, to visualize that there, because there are some amazing things that Vote is actually up to now in New Orleans. It's amazing what the newness, the groundbreaking services and the things that are going to be able to provide it for the community.
We've actually been in the building. It's not like the building is all pristine. I mean, they got dirt all on the floor and stuff like that. but it's to kind of like let people in the community know that we're here and that we're here to stay, that this is a part of the community and this belongs to the community. And so, my faith teaches me that try to leave something behind. And so we got a building so that the day tomorrow that we're no longer around, that people can pass and see, oh man, a lot of good work's come out of this building. And so it's just to celebrate how far we've come, but at the same time, how far we have to go. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for out of it, and to appreciate people who've been on this journey with us. We didn't get here by ourselves. And to see, 15 years later, how this have all manifested into where we at. So it's kind of like this celebratory thing about, come on, let's celebrate us. We've done something. If we die tomorrow, the world at least know we was here. And so demonstrating that from whence we came, being in a hopeless situation, that we celebrated that hope that one day, we can make this happen. Redemption for folks redeeming themselves and for their families and their community. and empowerment, man, how we have kind of like empowered people to stand on their own 2 feet and represent the community that they come from. Because being a part of something and belonging is two different things. And so that empowerment makes them a part of it and makes them belong, you know?
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. What you have to do is be in involved in what is going on,
That's it. And believe that you can make it happen. You know, you got to believe that you can make it happen. If you go into a situation thinking, woe with me, it's like Henderson sheep starting. And I said in this way that I'm willing to fight one day longer than you.
Amen.
And so I changed, you change the dynamics with that, because you make that person start wondering, like, wait a minute, when is he going to get tired? I'm not going to get tired. I might be tired right now. I'm not going to let you know I'm tired. I'm going to be like Ali sitting in that corner across the ring from Frazier. He was like, I don't know if I can get up out of this seat. But if Joe get up, I'm going to get up.
That's right.
So when Joe didn't get up, he was like, in his heart, he was like, I'm willing to fight one more round. But Joe wasn't willing to fight one more round. And so, you know, that you got to be willing to fight one day longer than them. And when you commit to fight one day longer than them, you're going to always win.
Amen. Well, Mr. Norris, I really appreciate your time.
Day in and day out, the community that you've built and the services that you're providing are such a contrast to what that other building,
exactly,
the Orleans Parish Prison.
And I tell people all the time,
I would say isn't prison, providing people, because it's not providing anything, right? But having those two buildings side by side and showing a different way is so exciting for us to show too.
Well, again, I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Norris Henderson, for sharing so much wisdom and so much history and inspiration. It means so much to hear the wisdom of those who have come before us and who have done so much to make what we are doing a little bit easier. But from the bottom of my heart, we just want to thank you. Thank you so much. Amen.
You can always win, you know?
Amen. I know that for such a time as this, right? That's what I live on. Because I just feel like it's about to just break through. It's about to break through. Amen. Well, again, I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Norris Henderson, for sharing so much wisdom and so much history and inspiration. It means so much to hear the wisdom of those who have come before us and who have done so much to make what we are doing a little bit easier. Thank you so much for giving of your time.
Norris Henderson is the founder and executive director of Vote NOLA, Voices of the Experienced. You can see a video of the ribbon cutting that Linda and I were able to attend at the new Vote building in New Orleans on the Fair Fight website. Look in the links we mentioned section of the podcast. That's fairfightinitiative.org. And now for a Fair Fight Initiative case update. a case that would only have been made possible through crowdsourced donations from people like you. This one comes from Chatham County, Georgia, my old stomping grounds, and involves a place that I am intimately familiar with, the Chatham County Detention Center, which, of course, those deaths that I covered during my time as a journalist there really drove me into a state of nervous exhaustion, and this is how I lend my voice to that cause now. However, the deaths in that facility continue. A lawsuit filed now on behalf of 34-year-old Lee Michael Creeley, who died in 2020. Here's another one of those cases, Linda, where, our knee-jerk reaction to something that doesn't require incarceration or a 115-mile-per-hour car chase may be able to be resolved under better circumstances if we just look inward a little bit. Lee Michael Creeley was arrested for a parole violation, which sounds serious until you realize it was because he forgot to update his address. So, of course, the natural response to this is we have to haul you to jail. Mr. Creeley was a drug user. He was also using Xanax and was marked as needing a detox protocol by the jail's health administrator at his intake. Their detox protocol is supposed to take place over 72 hours, where he is given medication and eased off of his drugs. However, the lawsuit now alleges in the 72 hours after his intake, he was only provided that detox medication once. Of the 72 half-hour interval safety and security checks that should have taken place during his detention, only 3 were made. 10 others were falsely entered into the system, and nurses only engaged with Mr. Creeley twice during that period. Meals were left at his jail cell that went untouched, and no one thought anything of it. When they finally found Mr. Creeley's dead body in his cell at the Chatham County Detention Center, he had been dead for so long that rigor mortis had already set in.
Oh, God.
It is cases like these that really bring to light the horrifying conditions that are taking place among people who are innocent until proven guilty. Mr. Creeley's offense was not updating his address. He's now dead. He leaves a wife and 2 children who, with the help of the Fair Fight Initiative and the Claiborne Law Firm in Savannah, have filed suit against the county, and most specifically against Correct Health, who at the time was operating under a $7.6 million annual contract to deliver healthcare services to the Chatham County Jail. And yet, in years prior, going all the way back to 2016, outside auditors had said that their scheduling, their manpower, their protocols, and their pill passing all represented deliberate indifference, or could be construed to represent deliberate indifference. And yet, the Chatham County Commissioners kept giving this contract to Correct Health. And in one case, when these audits came back and commissioners thought about issuing a new health contract to someone else, the sheriff, Johnny Wiltshire, in a classic case of the paid jailer, which we talked about in our last episode, personally intervened on behalf of Correct Health to help them keep their contract. And guess who got political donations from Correct Health? Of course, it was Sheriff John Wiltshire. This is now a multi-million-dollar civil rights lawsuit in Chatham County. We will be following it for you, but it's important to note in this case, it took more than a year to do this investigation that required enormous sums of money to get records, to hire experts, to do interviews, to do the basic blocking and tackling of that plaintiff attorneys typically will do with their own dime, and because of that, will not take a case like this. Well, with the help of the Fair Fight Initiative, crowdsourced money was able to pay for that investigation to take place to get to this point of the lawsuit.
The funding we received from the Fair Fight Initiative was critical in being able to investigate and move the Creeley case forward. For example, immediately after Lee died, we were able to hire an independent medical examiner to perform an autopsy on his body. The Creeley family, like most families, did not have thousands and thousands of dollars to be able to pay for that private medical examiner to investigate the true cause of his death. But because of the funding we received, we were able to do that.
That was Will Claiborne, lead counsel for the Creeley family in this lawsuit. And that's how this works. Crowdfund money to pay for the things that dissuade plaintiffs' attorneys from taking these cases, get better justice and better outcomes for families that are wronged by the system of justice.
That's so right, Dave. I tell you, it's just been so reminiscent, the same story over and over again. And I will tell you from personal experience that it is so needed. And from a family standpoint of view, it is life affirming to know that not only do you have an opportunity to find out and to seek justice, but that you don't have to be bankrupt or be a millionaire to be able to do it. It is so important, people, what the Fair Fight Initiative is attempting to do here in society. And we need your help. That's all I can tell you. So stay tuned for more on this case and others, so that we can let you know the good that your crowdsourced funds are making happen. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Dr. Martin Luther King said that, and despite the finite disappointment of the stories we share on the Fair Fight Initiative podcast, we maintain infinite hope that we can end it. In this segment, we would like to bring to light a class action lawsuit that was settled in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the 19th JDC, concerning bail, Dave. Mm-hmm. And when I tell you that this is monumental and amazing.
Absolutely, it is.
Lawyers from the Fair Fight Initiative, as well as the Advancement Project and the Robert F. Kennedy Foundation, came together on behalf of some amazingly brave, courageous plaintiffs out of the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison who were not being properly assessed bail and were given exorbitant amounts of bail that they could not meet.
Yep.
And what was happening was that the courts found that there was an unfair assessment of their ability to be able to pay that at the time of arrest and their first appearance before a judge, right? And so what this settlement has been able to allow to happen now is that the judges have to be aware of a person's ability to be able to meet the bond that they're setting. Mm-hmm. So in other words, it gives the judge an opportunity to see someone in a more holistic approach, right? Not just assessing the charges against them, but also the person that those charges are being levied against.
I mean, let's be clear here too. There were people accused of far more serious crimes who have bailed themselves out because they had the money. I mean, these are thousands and thousands of dollars of bond for people who couldn't afford it, who hadn't done more than, figuratively speaking, taking a candy bar.
Yeah. I mean, literally, there are people who are, arrested for petty theft. And in Baton Rouge, specifically, I can attest that every police officer tends to want to tack on with the intent to distribute with every possession charge. And so these judges feel as though they have to set an example that everyone before them is a gangbanging, drug-dealing criminal, and they are assessing extremely high bails. So while we were at the hearing, one of the people giving testimony was Ashley White with the Bail Project. And the Bail Project actually raises money to bail people out that can't afford their own. She noted that the average bail in Baton Rouge was over $25,000, right? Okay. But the median income here in Baton Rouge is $25,000. So the people that are being assessed this bail are people that have absolutely no way of meeting this bail. Their families have no way of meeting this bail. And you can tell that it is a way to continually confine people who are poor, whereas someone who could have gotten, accused of a heinous crime and got $1 million bond, as long as they could afford it, they were bonding out.
Yeah, effectively also setting up a debtor's prison style system in Baton Rouge.
Exactly. And some of the people are sitting in this facility for years, literally for years. It also has a provision where there is opportunity for their public defender and their lawyer to be present at these first appearances, to be able to advocate for the person who is being levied this bail. So it's amazingly huge step in the right direction. The judge that proceeded over the settlement talked about it being a good day for justice. And I just want to say that the gentleman that spoke on their behalf, the plaintiffs that were there, were just amazing and so courageous in speaking to how this affected them personally, where you could see that this is about humanity. And so it was definitely a good day for justice, and worthy of our Intimate Hope segment. And so actually what comes next is really important. How you can advocate in your community. So be aware, citizens of Baton Rouge, we'll be looking for volunteers who are willing to go and sit in on some of these first appearances to make sure that judges are assessing all of the criteria that the settlement sets forth with them, that they have to look at. So, this is a way that you as a community member can definitely get involved and helping this to be a very big step in a positive direction.
And a first step. You can see more information about this settlement that was brought by attorneys from the Fair Fight Initiative, among others, along with the Advancement Project, RFK Human Rights, the MacArthur Center for Justice, on our website, fairfightinitiative.org. We've got links to some of the news coverage. We can also link to the judgment for you so that you can see the new rules of the road that judges must operate under in East Baton Rouge Parish to make sure that people are accounted for as whole people before they're locked up and have to await trial.
Wow. Okay. So Norris Henderson, right? How amazing. The work, his life, I could always just hear him, just talk, because when someone takes their life and they can view it almost as curriculum for a college, course in just really how to be an advocate for human rights and for your fellow man, and for not leaving anyone behind, not, remembering where you come from and giving back. I think Mr. Norris is just the epitome of all of that, And I know he stands on the shoulders of so many people that have come before him, the people that he worked with in Angola, the people that he continues to work with now. He's always lifting them up. His mentors and people that have helped him along the way. But when you look at the man and what he's done with all of that opportunity, then that is the mark of a person, right? Because you can be given every advantage, you can be given every opportunity, but it's what you do with it. You judge people by the fruit that they bear. And I would say that Mr. Henderson's tree is chock full of good fruit.
We saw
it's just been amazing to talk to him. Exactly.
It was so incredibly moving to be there for their ribbon cutting and to see the people stand up that had been in Angola, to hear the stories of the way that Norris had impacted their lives. And just to look at Louisiana as a whole, as being, considered from a penal system view as the worst of the worst, right? And as now through his leadership, through Vote's leadership, through advocacy across a number of organizations, is really on the leading edge of reforming. We have a long way to go, and we have 50 states we have here. However, to see the work that they've done on voting rights, on parole, and on many other things. I mean, they're passing legislation every single year, and it can be a model for many, many other states, and I hope it is very soon.
Well, my hearts and prayers also go out to the Locke family and their loss of Amir. I mourn with you, and it's so familiar, but it does not, sometimes we can get anesthetized or numbed to the things that are going on in the world. And I just want you to know that I'm praying for your peace, and I'm praying for justice. I'm praying for the hearts and minds of us not to, look away when we see these things and continue to push forward. There is no need for the over-aggression that we face in our communities. And I just want you to know that here at Fair Fight, and especially on this Fair Fight podcast, this host definitely stands with you in solidarity for all that you are going through.
I second.
All that you're going through.
I second. Thank you, Linda. Yeah. And our thoughts and prayers also go to the Creeley family, of course, who is now at the center of a lawsuit brought by lawyers from the Fair Fight Initiative. Their father, their husband, died behind bars for a violation as simple as not updating his address. The pain that we have heard firsthand from that family in the wake of that loss because of Fair Fight Initiative's involvement in that case would bring you to ground. And we want them to know that with crowdsourced donations, with support and investigation, lives behind bars have value, and that we will work until the entire system and the entire world sees the lives of people behind bars as lives with value.
And then the bail settlement. I mean, talk about ending on a high note. This has been such a full plate today that we've had on this podcast, right? So much hope given by Mr. Norris, and then the things that are actually happening in the community. But this bail settlement is huge. I know it's going to impact a lot of people's lives in a positive way, and really galvanize the community and maybe spark a fire to get some good volunteerism going. So remember, there is always hope. There are so many amazing organizations in your community that are working hard and could use your voice or your donations or your encouragement. And we here at Fair Fight would like to lift all of that up. Thank you so much for joining us today.
The Fair Fight Initiative podcast is a production of the Fair Fight Initiative.
Founded in 2017, the Fair Fight Initiative is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to crowdsourcing litigation which advocates for the equal rights under the law, confronts systemic injustice, and helps victims challenge abusers in court.
We believe that justice crowdsourced is justice delivered.
Crowdsourcing resources from our contributors are able to finance the litigation no attorneys will take because of the overwhelming upfront cost to seek justice in our legal system.
And you can learn more about our mission and to contribute, go to fairfightinitiative.org. That's it for us this time.
I love you, Dave.
Love you too, Linda. See you next time.
See you guys next time. Bye.